elections. Briefly take us through some of the main issues that the parties are campaigning on.
Well, you've mentioned some of the question of whether the UK should remain a member of the European Union, and this is, of course, caused by a party called the UKIP, UK Independence Party, which has made some progress in previous elections of campaigning on this basis that the UK should leave. The other factor that's very important is the Scottish National Party, which has suddenly got a very large support coming to it, which it did not have when the referendum about whether Scotland should separate from the United Kingdom earlier. I think it was towards the end of last year. Now all of a sudden they've got a large support base, and they are taking over from the Labour Party in Scotland as the main party there. So what's really happening is that the whole political scene is fragmenting into many small parties, and it means that none of there's not going to be a clear outcome. They reckon that both the polls show that the Conservatives and the Labour Party each have about 33 to 35% of the vote, so neck and neck. So neither of them is going to win outright.
And that's something I want to touch on, that analysts have said that this election is too close to call.
Absolutely.
However, the real debate here is what a legitimate government would look like. Now, will the party with the most MPs form the next government as it stands, based on what we are seeing now?
Well, I think on the basis of those polls, they probably will come out with the same number of seats. So this is the problem. Now, what will happen is probably, if that happens, that the current Prime Minister has the edge. He is the government at the moment. He heads the government at the moment. So he'll be given the first chance to form a coalition. If he can get the Liberal Democrats and perhaps the UK Independence Party or something like that to support him, then maybe he can form a government which will pass a vote of confidence in the House of Commons. So that's the first stage. If that doesn't happen, then the Labour Party will get the opportunity, and they will have to decide whether they want to team up with the Scottish Independence, the Scottish National Party, and so on, or who they can get to form a coalition. But it means that the UK is going to have a weak government. And that's where this claim by Nick Clegg comes from, that probably there'll be another election before the end of the year.
Now, during the 2010 elections, there was a hung parliament, and this happens when a single party does not have enough MPs to form a majority on its own. Now, what will happen if there's another hung parliament, in practical terms?
Yeah, it'll mean that there'll be no government will be able to follow its full policies. In other words, they've got to take into account what the other minority parties who are supporting them will agree to. And if they do something that these disagree, they'll pull out their support and down goes the government. So it's a very difficult way of governing. It's not very productive. So I think that's what lies ahead for the UK.
Tom, why is the British 2015 election so unpredictable?
Precisely because the electorate have split up to support this whole range of parties that weren't there before. You know, once upon a time there were two parties, Labour and Conservative. Now you've got all these other parties which have, even Cameron's government at the moment is a coalition with the Liberal Democrats. And so that has managed to succeed. They're close enough in their policies to be able to. But if it's so fragmented and these people are all going in different directions, it's very difficult to govern.
Now, at the start of the interview, I mentioned that David Cameron has renewed his pledge to hold a referendum on the country's membership with the EU. Now, do you think this is his main ticket for re-election? Is that what he's holding on to?
Well, it's certainly one of them, because he hopes to keep UKIP in support of him by doing that. But of course it has the threat that if the population of the UK vote to leave the European Union, then it's a whole new ball game. then the UK is out there on its own. The Scottish National Party have said they're very much against that. So it's a whole new fight that will take place.
Now, the issues of nationalism and localism has been seen as detrimental to Europe before the World Wars. Now, there are those who are saying that this might happen after these elections, where the focus will be nationalism and localism. What's your take on that?
Well, I think that started to show during the elections for the European Parliament a couple of years ago, where parties who favoured splitting up the European Union did well. And it was a sign that Europe was going back to what it was like before the Second World War. In other words, individual countries competing with each other, rather than the European Union, which sought to prevent that sort of thing, to prevent wars, by uniting the countries of Europe under a central authority based in Brussels.
Now, just lastly, Tom, which candidate is likely to produce policies that are friendly to Africa? Because that's what we really care about.
Now you put me in the corner. I think one of the problems is that the income that taxes generate in the UK are below what the expenditure is. And so I think both governments, whichever they are anyway, will probably cut international aid. So Africa is going to lose.
So it's not good for us either way.
Either way, I don't think you can say
Which scenario would work for us then?
That they must get richer so that they can afford to spend more on Africa.
Tom, unfortunately we've run out of time, but thank you very much for joining us on the News at 8.
It's my pleasure.
That was Tom Wheeler, and he's an independent commentator talking to us about the upcoming elections in Britain.